Back then, whenever I got angry because of that so-called childhood sweetheart of his, it would always end in chaos. I'd shout something grand and dramatic. "If you don't come and coax me, I swear I'll never marry you in this lifetime." Later, when the crown prince of a neighboring kingdom came to propose, I begged him again and again to hurry and send his own proposal first. Yet he was late, because of that same girl. He arrived after the hour had passed, and I was already seated inside the bridal sedan, wrapped in a blazing red wedding gown, smiling as I told him, "Brother Xia, this time, I really won't be marrying you." They said that arrogant young general nearly rode his horse into immortality chasing after my entourage, yet he still couldn't catch up with the diplomatic convoy. So be it. Let me marry. Amid a hall of princesses, some weeping, some refusing, the moment I spoke, the golden throne room fell silent. Because for this peace marriage, everyone thought any princess could go, but certainly not me. My mother had passed away at the height of my father's favor, and was buried with the rights of a noble consort. My father grieved for 3 months without food or rest. Since I bore her face, I became the most cherished princess of Great Qi. So for such a cruel duty as a peace marriage, even if names were drawn by lot, fate would never fall upon me. That was the first reason. The second, everyone in and out of the palace knew I adored the young general from the Xia family. Who hadn't heard the tale of the cherished princess and the Xia family's eldest son, childhood companions destined to wed? Once I reached marrying age, father would surely issue an edict to bind our fates together. And yet now, before the envoys of the foreign crown prince, the first to step forward was me. "Jiahua, don't be reckless." My father froze, then darkened in anger and ordered me to step down. He never imagined that when I said I wouldn't marry Brother Xia anymore, I meant it, not out of temper, but from the heart. I had loved Xia without measure. When he made me angry, I would cry and shout, "If you don't come coax me, I'll never marry you in this lifetime." But shouting was useless. Brother Xia never came. He only thought me unreasonable, noisy, and troublesome. I cried, he ignored me. I sulked, then forgave myself, and by the next day I was smiling again, dragging him off to play some new game. With a temper like mine, how could I ever volunteer for a peace marriage? So when father scolded me, it was only natural. Only then did he notice, on such a grand occasion, Brother Xia was nowhere to be found. "Where is Xia?" Father asked. "Why hasn't he come yet?" I smiled bitterly. "Father, I'm not jesting. I truly wish to go for the peace marriage." He didn't know that from the very beginning, I had already sent my personal maid to inform Xianxia. 1,000 times begging, 10,000 times urging him to send his proposal before the envoys arrived. But the one who returned was only the maid, her face pale and hesitant. The general said, the young lady of the Wen family felt unwell with chest pains today. He must wait for the physician's diagnosis before making any decisions. Once again, because of that childhood sweetheart, he missed the moment. Wen Yunru, Xia's childhood companion. She was a cousin taken in by the Xia family after her maternal relatives met misfortune. Frail since birth, she was always the one he shielded whenever a breeze stirred. My deepest memory of her was from when my mother was still alive. Mother had been born into the Xia clan, so she often invited Lady Xia and her children into the palace. I was still young then, restless and mischievous. My favorite thing was the swing the palace attendants had made just for me. I begged Xia to push me. But he refused. He always thought me rude and childish, frowned, and said coolly, "You're a princess. You should learn to be dignified and proper." I huffed and pulled at Wen Yunru, who was standing shyly behind him. "If you won't play, fine. Yunru, you sit, let me push you." Mother had reminded me to take care of the frail little cousin. When we first met, she hid behind Xia as if I were some wild beast. To onlookers, it must have seemed like I bullied her. But I was generous, always was. Seeing her walking timidly behind him, stealing glances at me, swinging with longing in her eyes. I thought, she wants to play but doesn't dare. So I invited her myself. I swear, even if Xiaxia never believes me, that day, it truly wasn't on purpose. At first, we were laughing and having fun. Who could have expected that the ground beneath was uneven? My foot slipped, and my grip failed. A startled cry burst from Yunru. Pain flashed through my wrist. I lunged forward, but she had already fallen flat to the ground. Are you all right? Before I could finish, someone grabbed my collar and yanked me back, throwing me onto the floor. Xiaxia didn't even look at me. His whole attention was on the girl whose palm now bled from a scrape. His face was filled with alarm. Zhang Sunyun, he barked, what were you thinking? It's one thing for you to be reckless, but why drag others down with you? Yunru isn't like you, her body can't handle this. I trembled with rage. You mean to say I did it on purpose? Yes, I liked to play, but I wasn't so vile as to hurt a sickly girl for amusement. Yet Xiaxia didn't believe me. Even when Yunru, with tears falling down her cheeks, whispered, Cousin, it wasn't the princess's fault. It was me. I wasn't careful. He didn't waver. Yes, it wasn't careful. I cried quickly, desperate to agree. But he only held her tighter and said coldly, She's bullied you enough, and you still defend her. Isn't it because she can't stand seeing you close to me? That was the first crack. Later, when one of Xiaxia's maids suddenly vanished after being caught trying to climb into his bed, he became certain I had ordered her removal. He never knew the truth. That the girl had knelt before me in tears, confessing her family's ruin, begging me not to punish her. I had given her silver and told her to return home. I wanted to explain that to him. But when I tried, his face burned with anger. I know you grew up in luxury, he snapped, but even so, that was a life, Zhang Sunyun. When did you become so cruel? My head spun from fury. Yes. I'm cruel. Arrogant. Spoiled. Does that make you happy? I stormed off, leaving his voice echoing behind me. After that, I never explained. But Xiaxia wasn't stupid. Once he calmed down, he could have easily found out the truth. Otherwise, 3 days later, I wouldn't have received the jade hairpin he sent as an apology. Even so. In his heart, I remained Zhang Sunyun, the childish, ill-tempered princess with a narrow heart. They said we were childhood sweethearts, known each other for over 10 years. So tell me, compared to Yunru, what did I lack? I sat dazed on the cold floor. Only when the palace maids came running in panic to check the injuries did I realize. I wasn't the only one who'd been hurt. When I slipped, both my knees were scraped raw, my gown was torn and blood-stained. My hand, too, was scratched from his shove. Compared to Yunru's little cut, my wounds were far worse, impossible to miss. And Xiaxia had seen everything. That incident left a rift between us, a long, bitter silence that never truly mended. I stopped bowing my head first. No longer the foolish girl who soothed her own anger, only to run back smiling and tugging at his sleeve for affection. If nothing had changed, perhaps our story would have simply faded there. But fate mocked me, mother fell ill. When she passed, the Xia family was granted permission to enter the palace for her funeral rites. Mother knew all too well that within the cold palace walls, the fleeting affection of father would never protect me for long. So she grasped Xiaxia's hand and said softly, Ningning's temper is proud, but her heart has never been wicked. Xiaxia, if anything happens one day, please, take care of her. No one had ever formally arranged our marriage, but both families understood. It was a bond as good as promised. Xiaxia lowered his eyes and answered solemnly. I will not fail your grace's trust. Hearing that, mother smiled faintly and released his hand. A hand that never rose again. I cried until my voice broke. Mother. But she would never again wipe away my tears. Only Xianxia stood behind me, silently patting my back, accompanying me through the burial, the mourning, the final rites. It almost felt as if we had reconciled. And yet, something had changed. Where once there were two of us, now there were three. The jade hairpin once gifted to one girl had become a pair. When Xianxia led his first campaign, I reluctantly saw him off. I made him promise over and over to return safely. That if he didn't come back, I wouldn't survive either. They were only foolish words of affection. I would never truly seek death. Mother had taught me, no one in this world is worth dying for. He, ever calm, simply said, "Don't say such nonsense." He was gone for 3 months. And I waited for 3 months. Waited until I began to wonder if I should follow him after all. Then the maid came running. "General Xia returned 3 days ago," she said. "But the young lady one was frightened into illness, so he has stayed by her side, watching over her." My heart went cold. The next day, Xianxia finally came to see me. His face was weary, windburned, marked by hardship. When he saw I didn't rush into his arms as before, he seemed unsettled, and was the first to speak. "I'm fine. Don't overthink it. Jiahua, as a princess, you must remain composed. Don't do foolish things." The palace maids, mother's old attendants, must have told him everything. How I'd lost sleep, refused food, terrified he'd die on the battlefield. How I'd once even thought of dying with him. And after hearing all that, all he could say was that I was being impulsive and improper. Yet when Yunru, hardly composed or dignified herself, he'd stayed beside her for 3 days and nights. He waited for me to flare up as before, to cry, to scold, to make a scene, to accuse him of heartlessness. But I only parted my lips slightly and said, "Is that so?" I blinked once, forcing back tears, then smiled at him. "All right then." Xianxia froze, just for a heartbeat, then nodded. "It's good that you understand. That battle among 3 kingdoms earned Xianxia great merit. Our nations signed a treaty of peace." At the victory banquet, when Yunru sat proudly among the ladies of the Xia household, Xianxia kept glancing her way, as if afraid something might happen to her. I sat there, watching, my chest tightening, as though a stone had been laid upon my heart. I stood up abruptly, needing air. But the moment I turned into the corridor, I froze. There they were, the two who had left the banquet early, entwined in each other's arms beneath the pavilion. When Yunru was weeping, tears streaming down her face. "Cousin, you still won't accept me. Is it because of the princess? I'm willing to be your concubine. I won't compete with her." Xianxia didn't push her away, nor did he embrace her. His voice was calm, detached. "Yunru, let go. This is improper. Besides, what happens between me and the princess is not for you to interfere in." "Why?" she asked, her tears falling like pear blossoms in the rain. "I gave my word to noble consort," he replied. "I will marry Jiahua. A gentleman's word, even 4 horses cannot chase it." And Xianxia, he was always a man of his word. Yet somehow, hearing that, I didn't feel the slightest joy. When Yunru's voice trembled again. "Is that the only reason? Isn't that reason enough?" He countered. "But didn't you once say that the princess was arrogant and willful, unfit to be the mistress of a household? Even so, though she's reckless and stubborn, still you'll marry her." "Yes." He didn't hesitate. Nor did he deny a single one of the flaws she'd listed out me. My hands clenched so tightly that my nails dug into my palms. Once, I would have burst into the open, demanded an explanation, forced him to speak clearly. Now, I simply stood there, silent, still. And realized I no longer wished to ask anything at all. I was so focused that I didn't notice someone behind me. Until a soft voice brushed past my ear. "The princess's lover doesn't seem all that devoted." I spun around, startled. In the shadows stood a foreign man draped in a long cloak, eyes narrowed, half smiling. It took me a second to realize he must be one of the envoys from the neighboring kingdom. At once, I drew myself up, imperial and sharp. What are you staring at? Look again and I'll have your eyes gouged out. The man blinked, clearly not expecting the kitten thrown out of the palace to have claws. He froze for a moment, and by the time he recovered, I had already fled. He could only stand there, dumbfounded, then burst into laughter. To see the one you love embracing another. To hear them mock you behind your back. That pain alone should be enough. But to have even a stranger witness your humiliation. Truly, fate has a cruel sense of humor. And yet, misfortune, as it turns out, could get worse. At the banquet, father turned to that same foreign man and said warmly, "The crown prince has come a long way, your journey must have been tiring." The man glanced at me, lips curving into an unreadable smile. "Not tiring at all, your majesty. Great Qi is, quite entertaining. Crown prince of the Lu state, Guzijing. The future heir to the throne of the Lu state. And I could tell he had already set his sights on me. Throughout the banquet, his words carried subtle hints, playful undertones. To others, they might seem harmless. But Xiaxia knew me best. The moment he saw my expression shift at Gu Zijing's teasing, his brow furrowed. After the banquet, he pulled me aside, his tone sharp. "That crown prince is not a good man. He's here to discuss alliances and marriages. You'd best stay away from him." I laughed. The man in my heart had just been holding another woman, whispering tender words. And now he dared to scold me for how another man looked at me. Unfortunately for him, I've never been the submissive kind. Why should I stay away? If you can't stand it, then go ask father for my hand. Once you do, what does any alliance marriage have to do with me? He stared at me, stunned, unable to speak. I met his eyes coldly. "Xiaxia, if I really were chosen for the peace marriage, would you come and marry me first?" "That's absurd," he said with a frown. "Your father still mourns noble consort. He'd never send you away." But I didn't relent. "And if, just if, I truly were chosen, would you marry me then?" I asked. Perhaps knowing I would not stop until I heard an answer, he finally said, "I would." But he lied. I sent word for him to come. And yet, because of that same childhood sweetheart, he came late. Inside the grand hall, I saw Gu Zijing smiling at me. Of course he smiled. Because he had won the bet. From before that day, he had often lingered near me. I never liked him, he was from another country. 3 kingdoms, endless war. So many lives lost, how could one still look kindly upon the other side? I didn't understand lofty ideals. But I knew at least this much, the simplest truth of hatred. So even though the Lu state and Great Qi had just formed an alliance, in my heart, I still saw him as the fox offering New Year's greetings to the hen. Gu Zijing never defended himself. He only led me down a crowded street of the capital. There, refugees from the wars, ragged, skeletal, hollow-eyed, huddling the roadside. He said softly, "Since ancient times, wars among nations cannot be avoided. Hatred is inevitable. But in the end, people still have to live. Now that all 3 kingdoms are wounded, why continue this path of mutual destruction? Let those who remain live in peace, isn't that better?" He was a crown prince who did not crave war. His greatest wish was to end the endless struggle. But I retorted, "As long as people exist, there will be conflict. Even if peace lasts for a few decades, eventually they'll fight again." He looked at me steadily. "Perhaps. But at least I can ensure that in my lifetime. For a few short decades, my people will not die in vain because of war." Gu Zijing was sincere. He knew he did not have the power to unify the world. So he resolved to rule well within his years, to protect those under his reign. "Princess, shall we make a wager?" he said. Tomorrow, I'll make an official proposal. But you may go to Xiaxia first. If he reaches your father before I do, you win. If he's late, or doesn't come at all. You want me to go through with the peace marriage. I cut him off. He only arched an eyebrow, smiling. I was merely jesting. Whether the princess accepts or not, I would never force her. He didn't force me. But I agreed. When everyone realized I wasn't joking, the other princesses sighed in relief. The courtiers, however, began to whisper. But in the end, I was the one who volunteered. And father had no reason to refuse. No matter how much he had loved my mother. He'd once had many consorts. And no matter how dearly he cherished me. There were still countless princes and princesses besides. Later, I once asked Gu Zijing. Why were you so certain I would lose? He replied calmly. I met that Miss Wen once. I noticed the jade hairpin in her hair looked quite similar to the one you always treasure. Only hers was finer, without flaw, unlike yours, which bears a small imperfection. And in that instant, something inside me broke completely. So that was it. The jade hairpin I had cherished, believing it his first apology, was nothing more than a discarded twin. A flawed trinket, handed to me after he bought a matching set for his cousin. If that was the man Xiaxia truly was. What reason did I have left to love him? When he finally received word from the palace. When Yunru was ill again. Pale, clutching her chest, said to be gravely unwell. His mother, years ago, had saved only her from her ruined family. And ever since, she had told him again and again to protect Yunru no matter what. So for all these years, that's what he did. Thus, when the palace messenger arrived, Xiaxia merely replied coldly. Yunru is ill again, is she? Then it's fine if I'm late. Tell her not to make a fuss. Yes, he still thought it was just another one of Zhang Sunyun's tantrums. In his mind, their marriage had long been a settled matter. After all, the emperor still mourned the noble consort deeply. There was no way he would ever send her away for a peace marriage. So Xiaxia couldn't understand what nonsense I might be thinking this time. A woman so unstable, how could she ever be a fitting mistress for a general's household? Meanwhile, when Yunru said softly, Cousin, the princess sent for you. You should go. I'll be fine. He refused flatly. No need to concern yourself with her. I'll stay with you until the physician arrives. Even if mountains burned and seas boiled, Zhang Sunyun had never truly left him before. He assumed this time would be the same. Fortunately for him, when Yunru's illness turned out to be nothing serious. When he finally stepped outside, the sky was already painted in dusk. He suddenly remembered, today was the council meeting about the peace marriage. So he mounted his horse and galloped straight toward the palace. He thought to himself that I would no doubt throw another fit. So he planned to give in a little this time, admit fault, and be done with it. He was prepared for that. Yet when he entered the grand hall, to his surprise, the gazes of those around him were strange. A flicker of unease stirred in his chest. Most of all, he didn't see me anywhere. The discussion about the peace marriage, he asked, is it finished? One of the officials replied. It ended long ago. That was impossible. Normally, every princess tried to avoid such a fate. How could the matter be decided so quickly? The princess agreed to it. She did. Then, which princess? Jiahua, they said. Princess Jiahua is the one chosen for the marriage. Clink. The jade hairpin slipped from my hand and hit the stone floor. For a long moment, I just stared blankly, unable to react. Hearing the noise, a maid rushed over in alarm. Your Highness, are you all right? Half an hour ago, I had been the first among the princesses to step forward. Speaking slowly, clearly, to volunteer for the peace marriage. Half an hour later, I stood staring at the shattered hairpin lying on the cold stone floor. its two broken halves gleaming faintly under the lamplight. And still, I couldn't wake from the haze. My old nurse, who had raised me since birth, shouted anxiously. "What are you standing there for? Pick it up. Bring it to the jeweler and see if it can be mended. That's the princess's most treasured ornament." She knew me well. But the truth was, she wasn't the only one who knew how much I cherished it. Because that hairpin had been Xiaxia's gift to me. From the day he gave it, I had guarded it like a treasure. Locked deep within my jewelry chest. Only taking it out for the most special occasions. When Mother was alive, she used to tease me, smiling. "It's not even that valuable, why do you treat it like a sacred relic? Didn't your father give you many gifts far finer than this?" I only smiled shyly in return. Because that hairpin was the first thing Xiaxia ever gave me after an argument. The first time he ever lowered his pride to make peace with me. To me, it was different. For years, I had kept it safe. Terrified it might scratch or chip. But now, as I looked at its broken pieces, I felt, strangely, relieved. Perhaps this was fate. Even heaven must have decided that Xiaxia and I were never meant to be. The hairpin I had treasured for so many years was nothing more than a defective trinket. The leftover half of a pair. After he'd chosen the finer one for Wenyunru. Just like in Xiaxia's heart. Even if he truly loved me, and Wenyunru was nothing more than pity and filial duty to his late mother, I would always be the one he believed could endure. I didn't need to think twice to know. If I had truly insisted on marrying him, once I entered the back courtyard. And if Wenyunru happened to have chest pains one day and knee pains the next, Xiaxia would, without a doubt, believe I had a hand in it. Not to mention, that scene of Wenyunru weeping in his arms, I saw it with my own eyes. And knowing how his mother favored her, once I married in. If that woman, as mother-in-law, were to insist on taking Wenyunru as his concubine, what could I possibly do? If I endured it, resentment would fester. What woman could ever accept being second in her husband's heart? If I refused to endure it, I'd be condemned by the world. As the overbearing princess, the spoiled royal who bullied others with her power. Unfilial, petty, sharp-tongued, and proud. Either way, the disgrace would always be mine to bear. So I told my nursemaid. "The hairpin is broken, let it stay that way." She was the one Mother had left to me, more like a foster mother than a servant. Hearing me, she only sighed. "You and the general were so good before, how did things become like this?" I smiled bitterly. I used to think that if I gave Xiaxia my whole heart, then no matter the hardship after marriage, we could overcome it together. I kept deceiving myself, refusing to let go. But in the end, there are things that truly cannot be overcome. Tears gathered at the corners of my eyes and finally spilled, falling onto her hand that held mine tightly. "Nanny, Jiahua truly cannot bear it anymore. Call me false if you will, call me greedy for comfort and luxury. I don't care. But I can't live like this." Even if I kept lying to myself, coaxing myself into patience, I still couldn't keep living that way. Xiaxia would never imagine that one day, Zhang Sunyun, I, would wish to flee from him by 100,000 miles. But my nanny worried still. It's true men often have wives and concubines. But if the princess loves General Xia so deeply and still cannot endure, then marrying the crown prince of the Lu state, a foreign land, distant mountains, a harem of 3,000 beauties. How could the princess bear that? That's different, I shook my head. I couldn't bear Xiaxia, because my heart belonged to him. As for Gu Zijing, I thought briefly of his calm, luminous face. I don't love him. When you love, you worry. When you love, you fear. Without love, there's nothing to trouble you. To me, he's just a stranger. Even if he takes not 3 or 4 wives but 100. I wouldn't care in the least. I spoke without hesitation. And behind me came a voice laced with amusement. 100 wives. So in the princess's eyes, I'm that depraved, lust-addled kind of man. I turned slowly. The faint hope that had just risen within me quietly died. Gu Zijing stood there, arms crossed, head tilted, smiling, not quite mockingly, but close. It seemed we were born to argue. Every encounter ended with one of us losing face. And this time, it was, of course, because of my father. Even an emperor's heart, for all its coldness, still has its cracks. Knowing I would soon depart for a peace marriage. Perhaps he remembered his beloved consort at last. He sighed softly and ordered Gu Zijing to meet me again. To foster mutual understanding, he said. When I left the great hall, the banquet had yet to end. Word had spread that General Xia was already at the palace gates. Gu Zijing had a knack for drawing my attention. True to form, as soon as he mentioned it, I kept my face impassive. So he came. Let him. What's that to me? But my ears had already betrayed me, subtly pricked toward the door. In my palace chambers, there was a small garden. One mother had tended with her own hands. The old swing still stood there. But I hadn't sat on it since her death. Partly because I feared stirring memories too tender to bear. Her name alone could unravel me. And partly because of another memory. That same swing, that same moment years ago. When Wenyanru fell. And Xiaxia, without hesitation, shoved me aside. That image. I never truly wanted to remember it again. But now that I have resolved to let go, what is there left to avoid? So I sat up. Behind me, Gu Zijing's voice continued, slow and measured. I heard General Xia seemed very agitated. Not sure if it's because he doesn't want the princess to go for the marriage, or because someone at home has fallen ill and he's anxious. That man was infuriating, each phrase a thinly veiled barb, and even now he could not resist sowing discord. He paused a moment, then resumed with the same unhurried tone. I suppose, the princess would like to know. I shot him an irritated look and laughed coldly. You're the one I'm about to marry, yet you keep bringing up someone else, why is that? Are you really that magnanimous? Scolded, Gu Zijing blinked and for a second something like a hurt flickered in his eyes. He then said lightly, almost playfully. Anything else will do. I'll say whatever pleases the princess. Just don't ask for omens. I puffed my cheeks and stood on tiptoe, giving the swing a little push. Omens. He'd only mentioned Xiaxia a moment ago, meaning Xiaxia was the omen. That black-bellied man instantly changed expression, the corner of his mouth curved, and he reached out to give the swing a gentle push, smiling brightly. Then I'll tell the princess what she wants to hear. Aren't you always curious where those refugees I rescued that day came from? Within the inner court, news is the scarcest thing. Outside, people praised the princess for her simplicity, but no one understood that such simplicity often stems from being kept in ignorance. Like those refugees I brought in, we only know they fled war and disaster, we don't know where they were attacked, where they came from. I had no idea. The swing swung lightly, Gu Zijing's voice, low and steady, sounded behind me. To the south of Great Qi, to the east of the Lu state, there's a fertile strip of land where 3 countries meet. Fish are fat, fruit trees hang heavy. Naturally, many covet a slice more, and then another, until they would rather have it all. So every late winter and early spring, cavalry with spears ride through, burning, looting, slaughtering. Even if reinforcements come and win battles, homes are gone, families scattered. The lucky survivors crawl to the capital because it's still rich enough to beg for a meal. I slowed my push and asked softly. Is it that severe? Gu Zijing answered with a practiced gentleness. At least, we have prevailed. Since ancient times, the strong win and the weak lose. If you want to hold territory, you must pay the price, and it's paid in blood. Lu and Great Qi formed an alliance many years ago. If not, why would every new ruler bring up the matter of a princess's marriage? I was silent for a moment, then whispered. So, is a princess's marriage the only way to seal an alliance? Two states at peace, yet they must use a woman as guarantee. Thinking it over tasted bitter. Of course it's not strictly necessary, Gu Zijing said calmly, offering no defense. It's just, the way things have always been. Over time, people accept it as natural. Even if the Lu state wishes alliance with Great Qi without a marriage, the Great Qi emperor would not breathe easier. On the contrary, he'd grow more suspicious and think the Lu state harbors ulterior motives. If one side in an alliance begins to suspect, that is the deadliest taboo in diplomacy. If a third power slips in, the alliance collapses and war resumes, rivers of blood follow. That is why they are wary of a visiting princess. I wanted to argue. But the words stalled on my lips. It was true, my father was exactly such a man. His rule was nothing like the sages of old, he lacked the people's love, and the more ordinary he was, the more suspicious. Anything even slightly off would breed speculation. If the Lu state publicly rejected the custom of marriage binding, Great Qi's court would take it as a grave affront. Then shaky moves, one misstep, who knew what might happen? I fell quiet, then asked softly. So if I refused to agree to the marriage, what then? Gu Zijing did not hesitate. Then there will be no marriage. It was still the same line. He had never truly meant to force me into a peace marriage. He only followed the proper procedure to put my father's mind at ease. If no one was willing, there would have been no reason for him to insist. I am not a man of great genius, he once said with an easy smile, but neither am I so lacking that I must compel someone to marry me. Between husband and wife, there must be mutual support and sincerity, only then can the road ahead be long. Mutual support and sincerity. My eyelids twitched. My hands slackened on the ropes of the swing. My feet lost their balance. I heard the startled cry of a palace maid. The world spun, the ground rushing up to meet me, and I thought only, it's over. Resigned, I closed my eyes. Perhaps I was simply destined to have no fate with swings. Years ago, one had thrown me to the ground hard enough to bruise for days. Now it seemed ready to send me face first into the dirt again. And in front of Gu Zijing, no less, that annoying man who had already witnessed far too many of my humiliations. But the pain I expected never came. Years ago, Xianxia had shoved me aside to rush to Wen Yunru's aid. I had fallen, scraped my hand bloody, my leg burning with pain, and he hadn't even glanced at me. But this time, Gu Zijing caught me. His arms steadied me before I could fall, his expression flickering with guilt. My mistake. Are you all right, princess? Two memories overlapped in my mind. The warmth of his hands. And the cold indifference of Xianxia. My lips trembled as I whispered, dazed. My leg hurts. It really did. My hand too. I was hurt. I hadn't done anything wrong. So why was I always the one pushed aside? Why was I always the one left behind? Why was it that no matter how hard I tried, I was still the one scolded and blamed? Was it because my mother had loved me? And when Yunru had no parents? That I was forever the one who must yield? Then what now? My mother was gone too. Must I still go on yielding forever? Xianxia had told me countless times. You're a princess. She has no power, lives in fear, she's bound to be sensitive. You mustn't fuss with her. The mistress of the Xia household should be gracious and composed, not weeping and sulking all the time. So even though I hurt, I forced myself not to cry. Because Xianxia had never once asked me, does it hurt? To him, my pain was a lesson. A form of discipline. Something I was supposed to endure. But why was Wen Yunru's pain always different? My leg. At my words, Gu Zijing's face changed. A flash of panic crossed his calm expression. He reached out instinctively, then hesitated, the boundaries between man and woman halting his hand midair. He quickly called for the imperial physician, then bent slightly toward me. "Princess, let me help you back inside." I blinked and suddenly said, "Guzijing, I can't walk anymore, carry me." He froze. He knew. He knew there was someone in my heart. He knew that person had betrayed me. He knew exactly why I had agreed to the marriage. Did he have feelings for me? Perhaps not. If a man could fall in love after meeting once or twice, what kind of man would he be? At most, it was curiosity, a flicker of tenderness, the courtesy due from a future husband. We both understood that perfectly. There was always a mist between us, a sense of closeness that wasn't truly real. Two people standing on opposite banks of a river, quietly watching one another. One too cautious to step forward. The other too hesitant to move on. But now, one of us had finally taken that step. And the one waiting across, how could he waste even a heartbeat more? So Guzijing only paused for an instant before he bent down, gathered me in his arms, and carried me firmly toward the grand hall. His voice was gentle, calm. "It shouldn't be too serious, princess. Don't be afraid." I said nothing. I only nestled closer against his chest. Inside the hall, the old nurse had found a craftsman and was asking if the jade hairpin could be repaired. The craftsman looked uneasy. Broken jade can never truly be whole again. To restore it perfectly is impossible. The best I can do is inlay gold over the cracks. But even the finest gold filigree only hides the fracture, it never erases it. People might admire its beauty. But the truth remains, the crack still lies beneath. The nurse began to speak again, probably to urge the craftsman to try harder, for that hairpin was the princess's favorite. But when she saw Guzijing carrying me in, her face turned pale with worry. "Princess, what happened?" Guzijing's eyes showed a trace of guilt. He didn't deflect responsibility. "It was my fault. I pushed the swing a little too hard. The princess slipped and fell. I fear her ankle may be sprained." When the nursemaid heard that I had twisted my ankle, she panicked at once. All thoughts of jade hairpins or gold and silver were flung out of her mind. She hurriedly fetched medicine and sent for a physician. But when the physician arrived and saw that my knee bore no wound at all, he was left bewildered. By all accounts, the princess should have been fine. Yet I had just said my leg hurt so much I could hardly walk. Guzijing stepped forward to explain firmly. "I assure you, she's not lying." And truly, I wasn't. No matter how proud I might be, I wouldn't lie just to make people worry. At that moment, I was really in pain. The physician hesitated, then asked, "Aside from your leg, does anywhere else hurt?" "My hand," I said. "My hand hurts badly, it feels like it's bleeding." I opened my palm. Smooth and pale, flawless, without even a trace of blood. Silence fell. Then the nursemaid suddenly remembered something. "Your Highness once fell from a swing before, your leg was bruised, and your palm was cut and bleeding. It took a long time to heal." The physician asked then if it hurt, "But you said it didn't." "It was Xianxia," I said quietly. He had told me, when heaven entrusts someone with great purpose, they must also bear hardship in both mind and body. A few scratches and pain are nothing. As a princess, you must set an example, you must not cry out in pain. So I hadn't. But now, I could feel the pain. Why was that? Perhaps my past memories had begun to merge with the present. Back then, Xianxia never cared when I was hurt. But now there was someone kneeling beside me, concerned for my injury, genuinely worried. And so, all the pain I'd buried for years surged back, sharp and vivid, like phantom pain awakened. The physician finally understood. "It seems the princess's illness is of the heart. Now that she has opened it, a temporary loss of control is only natural." Everything became clear. The physician and Guzijing politely withdrew. The nursemaid, pale as parchment, could hardly breathe. She hadn't realized how Xianxia had taught me. She held me tightly, eyes red, whispering. It's my fault, all my fault. Since her ladyship passed, your highness has never been as lively as before, more timid, too. Because your mother's family was close to the Xia clan, and Xiaxia was. I thought letting you see him often would make you happy. I never expected. From the beginning, everyone assumed the marriage between me and Xiaxia was a given. Our meetings were always proper, restrained, never beyond courtesy. No one imagined he'd truly treat me like his future wife and teach me as one. Did he really believe I would marry into the Xia family? The Xia clan may be powerful, but our princess is not one of them. What kind of household forbids even crying out in pain? Marry him. The nursemaid burst into tears. Dream on. Her ladyship trusted them too much, trusted them so blindly that even on her deathbed, she told the princess to heed the Xia family's words. I didn't argue. I only repeated what I'd said before. Nanny, don't fix it anymore. The jade hairpin, don't mend it. No mending. She cried. We'll throw it away, far away. No more mending. The nursemaid agreed at once. It wasn't a matter worth keeping. And strangely, I wasn't all that sad. Mother was gone. But I'd always obeyed her, remembered her every word. She told me the Xia family would never harm me. That I should listen to them. That Xiaxia was the best choice she had arranged for me. With that bond, at least I, without a mother in the palace, would not suffer. She wasn't wrong. Everything she said was true. She just never foresaw how easily hearts could change. How compared to me, Wen Yunru would always seem gentler, and the Xia family would naturally favor her more. Xiaxia, eldest son and heir, was destined for honor. And I, if I married into the Xia family, would become their wife. A husband leads, a wife follows. Should I not, then, learn to yield and be gracious toward Wen Yunru? Utter nonsense. The nursemaid snapped. Not yet married, and they already expect obedience. Even demand that a princess follow their rules. The Xia family must think themselves so mighty that no one can restrain them. The princess may have lost her mother and her father's affection, but she is still a princess. Do they think they can trample her dignity so easily? I was never a princess of high standing, and I'd endured my share of humiliation. But I wouldn't, let them see me crushed. That day, the nursemaid's outburst truly severed any lingering thought of Xiaxia in my heart. From then on, I no longer felt regret for not marrying him. As for Gu Zijing, he waited for me outside, giving quiet instructions before he left. When he saw that I was fine, he exhaled softly in relief. I asked him, "Do you think me a foolish princess? Otherwise, why would you believe I'm blindly chasing love, acting weak and pitiful?" At that, his expression turned serious. Why would I think that? This palace is silent, and few men ever pass through its gates. Aside from His Majesty and General Xia, the princess has no one else to meet. How could I call that narrow-mindedness? And as for being consumed by love, what else can a princess do? You cannot appear in public. Your only duties are embroidery and study. If even love is forbidden, what else remains in this world that could ever belong to you? If a princess can go out and do business, study, take exams, or travel the mountains and rivers, yet still thinks only of one man and cares for nothing else, that, he said, is what it truly means to be consumed by love. He spoke plainly. If all there is love, then how could it be called consuming? I laughed. Looking at him, I said, "You certainly know how to make everything sound grand." As if marrying him would suddenly mean I could appear freely in public, do whatever I pleased. He looked as if he wanted to say something more. But I no longer wished to hear it. That was when I realized. There was still one last thing I could do, something entirely my own. After he left, I immediately requested an audience with father. They always said I was the most beloved princess in all of Great Qi. At first, that was true. When mother passed away, father was still lost in grief. The servants who saw his sorrow learned to curry favor through me, and I lived comfortably enough. But time dulls even the deepest mourning. New beauties entered the palace one after another. And a noble consort who had turned to dust was soon forgotten. Before long, father had all but ceased to remember me. Occasionally, at palace banquets, when he saw me, I could see a flicker of guilt. A faint echo of his promise to my late mother. He would summon me forward, ask a few questions. And that was all. Those few questions were enough to keep me from misery. But not enough to make me special. I learned to be sensible. To know when to stop asking. To cause no trouble. To never offend the other princesses. This time, however, was the first time I had ever asked to see him of my own accord. At the sight of me, his face darkened with weariness. Still, he forced a gentle smile and said, "I'm told you insist on seeing me. Why? Do you regret it now?" That last question carried the weight of imperial command. A warning wrapped in calm words. This was, after all, a decision made before the court. There could be no taking it back. Besides, he had already given me a chance to refuse before, and I hadn't taken it. So what right had I to change my mind now? Pretending not to hear the warning in his tone, I knelt down and spoke steadily. "Your Majesty, Jiwa understands your words are never made in jest. I would never place father in a difficult position. The peace marriage is my decision, and I do not regret it." For a long moment, silence. Then father's smile returned, gracious, untroubled. "I know the daughter of the late noble consort is clever indeed," he said softly. "Jiwa, come closer, let me take a good look at you." He sighed. "Your mother has been gone for many years. I have been buried in state affairs and neglected you." His gaze softened, the way a father looks at a daughter. "You may not know," he continued, "but even you understand the balance of affection and indifference, while that boy from the Xia family does not. Today he arrived late and made a scene at court. He went on, insisting that you must not be sent away. That as the daughter of noble consort, it would be wrong to marry you off to a distant land. Ridiculous. He never objected before, why now? This is an alliance between two nations. How could I allow him to disrupt it? So I had him dragged out and confined. That should be enough." As father spoke, he watched my face carefully. "Jiwa," he said at last, "that Xia boy clearly cares for you. A ruler is ever suspicious. He could not tolerate a princess bound by love for another man once she was wed abroad. He had to be certain that I would leave without attachments. But I didn't flinch, didn't change expression. I answered calmly. My mother was of the Xia family. In her lifetime, she often asked them to look after me. General Xia, as their eldest son, has always been respectful toward his elders." The meaning was clear. What Xianxia did today was not affection, but filial respect for my late mother. Father burst out laughing, pleased. "Ah, Jiwa truly is my daughter. These years I have wronged you, and wronged her as well. You're to be married soon, whatever you desire, just tell me. I will surely grant your wish." Though he said that aloud, I knew he understood me well enough. I was not one to overstep or demand what should not be asked. As he expected, my request fell well within the bounds of what he could allow. "Father," I said softly, meeting his gaze, "I want a dowry." Then, with the most obedient smile, I added, "A great deal of it. As much as possible." He blinked in surprise, then burst into hearty laughter. "My daughter is about to be married off, how could I ever let her suffer a loss?" He teased me for being shallow, a girl who cared only for wealth and splendor. But that very shallowness seemed to please him. Because it meant I wasn't making things difficult. And so, the days passed in peace. All I had to do was wait for the envoys of the Lu state to prepare for departure. My bridal procession would leave with theirs. During that time, letters from the Xia family began to arrive, many of them. The handwriting on the envelopes was one I knew better than my own reflection. I glanced at the first letter only once. Then brought it close to the flame and watched it curl into ash. I didn't look back. The messenger came again and again. Sometimes with old keepsakes, sometimes with words he was told to pass on. I threw away the trinkets. As for the messengers, I had them dragged out of the palace gate. At last, the day before my departure came. It happened to coincide with the day the concubines entered the palace to pay respects to the empress. And before my hall stood one more person. She wore a pale pink gown, her figure slender, her manner gentle. Her face was as pale as paper, fragile enough to melt in the wind. When she saw me, she lowered her head timidly, as though I had once bullied her. Yunru greets the princess. I was seated, reviewing the dowry list. After a brief thought, I looked up and said evenly. My nurse tells me that if I refuse to see you, you'll stay outside my hall and cause a scene until everyone in the palace notices. One Yunru flinched slightly, clutching her handkerchief tight before nodding. If the princess refuses to see me, Yunru has no choice but to act so. Whatever punishment the princess deems fit, Yunru will accept. I only beg that the princess listen to what I have to say. Her words left no room for refusal. In the past, my temper would have flared instantly. I would have laughed mockingly. What if I don't want to listen? What could you possibly do? Then I would have had her thrown out and the doors shut behind her. She would have looked pitiful, earning sympathy. And I would have once again been branded arrogant, unreasonable, cruel. But now, I said nothing. I simply continued scanning the dowry list, silent and composed. Enough to throw her off completely. After a long pause, she ventured cautiously. Cousin has been confined at home by his father. He hasn't eaten or drunk for days. He's been worried about your highness all this time. Yet no matter how many letters he sent to the palace, he received no reply. So, with no other choice, he begged me to come, to see if the princess was well. Of course. What else could it be? Naturally, I had burned them all. I tilted my head slightly, voice cold as ice. So what if I did? After all, I am the princess of Great Qi, soon to be sent in marriage abroad. Why would anyone think there's something wrong with me? My tone was so frigid that when Yunru paled further, panic flickering in her eyes. She dared not tell me that before coming, Xianxia had kept muttering over and over. Jiahua must be imprisoned. She would never agree to this marriage on her own. She must have been forced. These past few days, unable to see me, she must have been beside herself with worry. Knowing that she could not marry me, that I was to be sent away to a foreign land, how her heart must have ached. Would she, in her grief, do something foolish? Would she hurt herself? Yunru, Xianxia said, help me. Help me see her. I'll find a way to make His Majesty change his mind about who's sent for the peace marriage. That cousin of mine, who had always been calm, proper, and restrained, now no longer cared for propriety or reason, and was doing something so reckless, so undignified. When Yunru's heart finally softened, she couldn't bear to see Xianxia in pain. Even though it hurt her, she still nodded. In truth, there was a flicker of secret joy inside her. All her life, everything I had was what she longed for, even Xiaxia's heart. Now that I was to be sent away for a peace marriage, it meant there was no longer any possibility between him and me. With my temperament, she imagined she'd find me in a miserable state. But when she came to see me, she was caught off guard. I looked radiant, healthy, bright-eyed, not the least bit weary or distraught. I looked as if I had eaten well, slept peacefully, and had not shed a single tear. You. One Yunru's throat tightened. Seeing that I asked nothing about Xianxia, she gritted her teeth and pressed on. Princess, do you truly not care about him? You know full well he loves you, yet you leave him behind, willingly agreeing to a foreign marriage. And you haven't sent even a single letter of comfort or apology. Are you really that heartless? Silence. I cut her off coldly before she could finish. Even I startled at the sound of my own voice, it trembled slightly, my face paling. But I forced my tone into icy calm. Tomorrow, I depart for the Lu state, to become its crown princess. If you won't congratulate me, fine, but do not speak to me about another man. Who I marry has nothing to do with Xianxia. And why should I write him a letter of apology? Wen Yunru, are you trying to ruin a princess's reputation? The accusation hit her like a slap. She froze, stammering, then blurted out in panic. But everyone knows my cousin was supposed to marry you. Then let him marry me. After all these years, he kept delaying. Even when talks of the alliance came up, he dragged his feet still. Why should I wait for him? Do you think he's the only man in the world? He's the one with a divided heart, yet he dares to call me faithless. Shameless. Wen Yunru's lips trembled, but no words came. At that moment, my old nurse entered, carrying a box. Your Highness, this is a gift from the Crown Prince of the Lu state, each piece carefully chosen by him. They're all of the finest quality. Then, as if to tease, she added. The prince said, you may throw away whichever you dislike, and if you can't finish throwing them all, that's fine too. Of course, Gu Zijing hadn't said that. It was my nurse's mischief. But the jade hairpins inside were indeed exquisite, clearly selected with care. A small slip of paper lay on top, written in his familiar, playful tone. Out with the old, in with the new. I smiled, lifted one of the pins, turning it in my hand. A warmth spread through my chest. It was truly beautiful. Then I turned to my nurse. Go over the dowry list again. Make sure nothing's missing. At that moment, anyone who looked at me would see only a vain, greedy princess. A woman with eyes full of jewels and silks. The sight infuriated Wen Yunru. My cousin loves you so deeply, and yet you lower yourself like this. You'll regret it. She spat, wiping her tears before storming off. As if losing Xianxia were the greatest tragedy of my life. I watched her back recede into the distance. Then let out a faint, mocking laugh. At last, on the day Gu Zijing and I set out, the sky was impossibly clear. To make up for it, my father presented me with an extravagant dowry. Of course, it was also meant for the envoys of the Lu state, to uphold the dignity of our court. I sat within the bridal sedan, watching as the familiar capital dwindled into the distance. My nurse sighed, this time. I fear you may never return. I looked back one more time, a flash of reluctance and sorrow in my eyes, because that place still held my mother. For decades I had assumed I would live there my whole life. Who would have thought that after so many years I would be married off 1,000 miles away, never to return? Jiawa, a call from afar grew clearer. Someone in our procession exclaimed in surprise. From above, I saw a rider hastening toward us. The composure and calm that once belonged to him were gone, only gauntness and fluster remained. When he saw me his eyes were rimmed with red. General Xia. My nurse could hardly believe her own eyes. Remember, he had been under house arrest. It wasn't only my nurse who remembered him. Behind Xianxia stood the men who had come to fetch him. He had not eaten or drunk for days, his strength was nearly gone. They restrained him quickly, but he still tried to reach for me, choking out, don't go, don't go. I suddenly recalled those old threats I made whenever Wen Yunru angered me. I never raged, I only muttered a single warning, if he did not come to soothe me, I would not marry him. And now here I was, wearing a red bridal robe in my neighbor's marriage sedan, smiling brightly and calling to him as before, Brother Xia, this time I truly won't marry you. From a distance I could see tears and regret. He seemed utterly spent, forced to be held back by others, because he had heard my words clearly. I had chosen this freely. I would not marry him. The journey to the Lu state was the first time I truly left the inner palace. At last I saw things I had never seen before, rivers that stretched beyond the eye, endless mountain ranges, people working from dawn, refugees, gaunt, hollow-eyed, shuffling toward the capital. Whenever we passed a place, I would, in my capacity as princess, distribute part of my dowry to local magistrates so they could settle refugees and restore livelihoods. I left attendants behind to oversee and help. By the frontier, this was no longer merely a refugee camp. Natural disasters, war, and then layers of withdrawn imperial relief had stripped the place bare. Only desperate people remained, on the verge of death. Yet the dowry I had carefully accounted for had not been redirected. Finally, I reached the settlement the refugees once fled to. A massive relief fund poured in, enough to break the vicious cycle. Gu Zijing had no objections. He was eager to help me draw up plans. When he noticed I watched him cautiously now and then, he couldn't help but smile and say, "The dowry belongs to the princess. I'm not so greedy as to snatch my future wife's dowry shamelessly. If it's the princess's, you may handle it however you like." As for why he helped me with the ideas, he understood plainly, whether I accepted his counsel or not, the princess would distribute the aid. If I accepted his suggestions, I would like him more, so why not make the future wife pleased? He had guessed correctly. I rarely devoted myself wholeheartedly to anything, but once I decided, I sought out court officials who were most active in disaster relief. At first they thought I was causing a fuss and paid little heed. But when they understood my intent, they were moved and offered useful counsel. So even without Gu Zijing's advice I already knew what to do. When all the dowry items I requested were arranged, I finally crossed the Great Qi border and entered a new land. I breathed easier. The worry was solved. As for the road ahead, be it life within the court of the Lu state, or how Gu Zijing might treat me, I no longer cared. At worst, one dies. I had nothing left to regret. With my worst-case plan ready, I only waited for Gu Zijing to reveal his true face. As I was about to enter the palace to meet the emperor and empress of the Lu state, Gu Zijing pulled me close and said, "My father may seem stern, but don't be afraid, he means no ill. As for my mother..." He paused for a moment, then smiled. "She's very warm toward others, you'll get along well with her." "What about the younger brothers and sisters?" I asked without thinking. "Younger brothers and sisters." Gu Zijing looked puzzled for a second, then understood. "Oh, those under my command. They're juniors, their opinions don't matter." Only when I met them did I understand what he meant. The emperor of the Lu state was a tall, broad man. When he didn't smile, his face truly looked fierce, more like a battlefield general than a ruler, someone who wouldn't hesitate to kill. I exchanged a few formal greetings as protocol dictated. Indeed, he seemed cold, proud, distant. But that coldness lasted only a heartbeat before being shattered by a loud voice. "My son-in-law. Let me see what my son-in-law looks like." Zijing, that rascal, always shirking his duties to wander the mountains. "Why are you only showing up now?" The woman who entered wore imperial robes but moved with such quick, unrestrained steps that her hairpins swayed wildly with each motion. Her eyes and face were all smiles, utterly unrestrained, completely ignoring decorum. I was stunned. Someone in the palace behaving this freely, before the emperor, no less. She even took a step forward, giving her husband a side glance. "And who are you scowling for? You'll frighten our daughter-in-law. If you insist on playing the strict father-in-law, don't expect me to play the wicked mother-in-law." The emperor, once so imposing, now looked entirely helpless. "After all these years, how can you still think of me like that?" The empress ignored him, took my hand gently, and rubbed it between hers. "Why are your hands so cold? Let mother warm them for you, oh my, so soft." Her enthusiasm was overwhelming. Only then did I finally understand what Gu Zijing meant earlier. After marrying into the Lu state and becoming the crown princess, I realized I wouldn't have to live caged in the palace at all, because the Lu state had an empress unlike any other. Rumor said she had once been a mountain healer, skilled beyond compare in acupuncture and surgery, able to cut tumors, save lives, even bring back those close to death. When the emperor, then still a prince, was leading troops at war, it was she who saved him. They had gone through fire and blood together before ascending to the throne. Even after becoming empress, she never bound herself by palace etiquette. She still ran her own pharmacy and taught medicine to anyone willing to learn, men and women alike. Because of her influence, the women of the Lu state were encouraged to work, to build their own livelihoods. And so, within that vast harem, there was only one empress, and no other concubines. No wonder. With parents like that, how could Gu Zijing be anything else? What surprised me most, however, was this. After marrying into the Lu state and becoming crown princess, I actually lived well. On our wedding night, when Gu Zijing lifted my red veil, he said quietly, "My father and mother have only each other. I, too, wish to love only one woman. If your heart still belongs to someone else, I won't force you." Such words, right before the bridal chamber. I laughed, half angry. Then why marry me at all? If I hadn't, he said calmly, you still wouldn't have been free to choose. Better that the world believes you married me, then, after some time, you could feign death and live as you please. He and his mother truly shared the same temperament. I thought of the great Qi emperor, likely still oblivious. Well, that would make this whole marriage one good deed then, I said dryly. If my father ever learns of it, he'll break your legs. How can you treat such a grand alliance as your personal farce? He wasn't the least afraid. With my mother here, he wouldn't dare. Then, with all seriousness, he added. Mother says women in this world never have it easy. Her strength is too small to save everyone, but she taught me this much, when you meet such a situation, you must at least save one. I felt a faint sting in my eyes and asked quietly. So you married me, only to save me? He shook his head. His dark eyes fixed on me, saying nothing. But in their depths, everything was already spoken. Love at first sight, what a foolish thing. Yet after months and nights spent together, side by side through the long journey, I had looked upon him 1,000 times. After becoming the crown princess, I was busier than I had ever been as a princess. But not because I had to memorize court etiquette or learn the 10 virtues of womanhood. It was because my husband's mother refused to let me be idle. She feared I might feel lonely so far from home, or unwelcome in a foreign land. So she pulled me into her daily life, reading medical case scrolls together, laying cucumber slices over our faces, and even sticking acupuncture needles into my leg. After several treatments, the dull ache in my knees that flared with every rainfall disappeared completely. But she still wasn't satisfied. If medicine weren't so primitive in this era, she said, I'd only need one treatment to fix this. When she saw my curiosity toward the needles, she happily taught me. Everything in this country seemed strange yet remarkable. The emperor governed the realm. But the empress oversaw women's work, trade, and marriage affairs. In the inner court, there were female officials with clear duties. If any woman reported being unfairly treated in business simply for being a woman, there would be investigation and justice. If a woman was forced into marriage, the law itself would intervene. As crown princess, I began studying these affairs of state. It was a world entirely unlike Great Qi. The female attendants by my side told me it was all thanks to the empress. If not for her, women in the Lu state would have lived no differently from those in Qi. But to reach this point, even with imperial support, had taken decades of effort. Indeed, women in the Lu state could engage in trade now, but under many restrictions, and when it came to learning to read or taking examinations, there was still a long road ahead. The empress once told me, "This isn't something one person can accomplish. It takes many people, many years, and many sacrifices. Nothing can be done overnight, but as long as each step moves forward, it's never wrong." Her gaze, calm and profound, seemed to look straight through me, seeing far more than I could hide. And I suddenly realized, not everyone revered her. Among the common folk, secret rumors whispered that she was a strange woman who appeared out of nowhere, committing acts against the natural order. No one knew her origins, nor where her family resided. Someone had once asked her, and she only smiled and said, "That place is very far away, very far." But such words could only be spoken in whispers. Everyone knew the emperor's devotion to her was absolute. If anyone dared spread gossip in his hearing, misfortune was sure to follow. I nodded as if I understood, though the truth remained hazy. Then a court maid's voice came from outside the hall. "Your Highness, envoys from Great Qi request an audience. They say they are old acquaintances of the crown princess. It had been 3 years since my marriage into the Lu state. I had heard no word from home for so long. Then one day, by coincidence, I met a merchant caravan from Great Qi. They said the emperor of Great Qi was gravely ill, though the crown prince governed the realm wisely. And they mentioned that not long ago, there had been a wedding. The eldest son of the Xia family, General Xia. His bride was his frail cousin, often sickly. Now, as I saw Wen Yunru standing beside Xiaxia, I felt no ripple of emotion, only calmness as I said softly, "Please, be seated." Old faces, old stories, time had long erased them. In contrast, Xiaxia looked at me, cheeks flushed, his frame a little fuller than before. Something about it stirred a faint tenderness in me. "Jiahua," he began. "General Xia," I interrupted gently, brows arched in polite reminder, "please address me as Crown Princess." I smiled faintly. "Is your visit today on my father's behalf? Does His Majesty have any message for me?" It was mere formality. In truth, with my father's condition, it was miracle enough that he still lived. He could not possibly have sent words. My detached tone left Xiaxia visibly ill at ease. After all, in the past, I had always been the one chasing after him, calling him Brother Xia with a bright smile. His gaze was complicated. "The emperor is gravely ill and cannot speak," he said quietly. "The crown prince only sent me to ask whether the crown princess is well." The crown prince was the son of another consort, never close to me, but still my brother by name. A polite inquiry was natural enough. At that, my expression softened. "Please thank His Highness for his concern. Jiahua is quite well." I had no intention of saying more, but Xiaxia could not hold back. "Is he truly good to you?" he asked. "I heard from the palace servants that you are constantly busy. To have a woman burdened with affairs of state, isn't that deliberate hardship?" I laughed, sharp and humorless. "General, in my husband's residence, there is only me. As the crown princess of the Lu state, it is my duty to care for the people. My husband trusts me enough to share responsibilities with me. How can that be called hardship?" What did he think hardship meant? To marry him, live in his inner courtyard managing his 3 wives and 4 concubines, serve his mother, and tend to his frail cousin. My words were laced with thorns. Beside him, Wen Yunru spoke softly. "Xiaxia only worries for you. After all, women shouldn't have to work outside. The Lu state is truly a barbaric land, so crude, so..." Silence. The shout cut her off, but not from me. It came from Xiaxia. "Xiaxia, I was only trying to help you," she stammered, shocked. Never before had he spoken to her that way. But he showed no sign of softening, his jaw tight. "The affairs between 2 nations, how dare you interfere? Be silent." Even he hadn't expected her to speak so recklessly. Great Qi and the Lu state were allies now, and they had come as envoys, yet she dared to insult the crown princess of the Lu state to her face. Did they not fear damaging diplomatic ties? Clearly, Wen Yunru hadn't thought so far. She only knew she'd been scolded in front of me, her eyes filling with tears. "You scold me, so you do despise me for being weak. Fine, I'll die then. If I'm dead, you'll both be happy." She sobbed hysterically, stumbling toward a pillar as if to smash her head against it. Xiaxia didn't stop her. The sight left me speechless. Only later did I learn the truth. That Xiaxia had married Wen Yunru at his mother's insistence. But the frail Wen Yunru had borne no child for 3 years. His mother, growing impatient, began urging him to take a concubine. She found a woman she claimed resembled me. How she saw that resemblance, I'll never know, and became obsessed with the idea. This trip to the Low State had been Wen Yunru's demand. She had sworn to die if she couldn't go, terrified that Xiaxia might see me and rekindle the past. As if she hadn't realized, I was no longer that girl. Even if there had been a chance left between us, I would never take back what I'd once thrown away. In the hall, the couple's quarrel rang on. I had no patience for it. I only stifled a yawn and turned to leave. Gu Zijing was waiting for me to have dinner. The end.